person should be living in there. And I'm sorry if we're successful in shutting it down, but I'm sorry about I'm sure we can do much better than this. Nobody should have to live like this.
Tonight, advocates say a Winnipeg hotel should be shut down.
Some projects don't have their major greenhouse gas emissions assessed. That's a systematic problem.
The Supreme Court strikes down a federal law that oversees projects like pipelines.
Fort Smith is still grieving from it, and I think once those buildings are torn down and we can see new buildings.
And calls to demolish residential schools in Fort Smith. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Winnipeg, where advocates for missing and murdered Indigenous peoples brought their drums and voices outside a hotel in the city's north end. They're calling for the accommodations to be shut down. Tamara Pimentel has more.
This is the inside of the Manwin Hotel off Main Street in Winnipeg. Sunken floors and ceilings, a last resort for many of the city's homeless population. Frontline workers and advocates for missing and murdered Indigenous people say this has been a hub for drugs and human trafficking. These living conditions prompted a protest calling for the Manwin to be shut down. Barb Gaumond is the organizer.
No person should be living in there. And I'm sorry if we're successful in shutting it down, but I'm sorry about I'm sure we can do much better than this. Nobody should have to live like this.
Patrol groups like the Sabe Peace Walkers and the Downtown Community Safety Partnership walked media through the building. They say more emergency housing is needed in Winnipeg.
If there was an emergency place we could send people that wasn't already at capacity, places like this wouldn't exist. Right? This is a last resort for people.
Manwin owner Akim Kamamba hasn't returned any of APTN's calls or social media messages. He told Winnipeg City News Channel yesterday that the hotel is providing accommodations for people who have nowhere to go and denied any claims of human trafficking.
I know exactly the things that goes on in these places, and it's very horrible, the things that go on. And if the public knew, then they would be out there with us and trying to get this place shut down also.
Those drumming and singing say they won't stop until the Manwin closes its doors and a safer space is created for Winnipeg's most vulnerable.
I think we should keep coming here to protest until they shut down, because I'll keep coming here. It's very dangerous. I don't want the next generation to come here.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Now, the City of Winnipeg said by email that city and provincial inspectors attended the hotel in August this year. Orders have been issued as they relate to property standards, including floors, garbage, electrical, and plumbing. In August, fire inspection revealed there were no fire code violations, which would have justified a vacate order. They say they are in communication with the property owner to resolve issues. A search is underway in northern BC for a young woman who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. APTN's Tina House has more.
This is the last known selfie that 29-year-old Chelsea Heron posted on her Facebook page at 11 p.m. Later, around 2 a.m., her dad heard the front door open and she left her father's residence on the Sycas First Nation near Vanderhoof, BC. Tamara DeLong is her aunt and joined us using Zoom.
And he's got a security system that I guess said the time that his front door opened. And he just thought she was going out to have a cigarette and that she would be back. And he said he just went back to sleep and then woke up at 6:30 or 7:30 that morning because her dog was crying. Her dog had got attacked the night before, the day before. So Pepper was crying, so he thought that she would look after the dog, and then Pepper just kept crying, so he went down to check and she wasn't home.
That was on October the 10th, 2023. Because this is out of character for her, search teams were mobilized immediately, as well as the RCMP were called. Adding to the mystery, her dad found her cell phone smashed on the basement floor. The RCMP now have the phone and are hoping to recover who she last spoke with for clues.
She never just goes and leaves without her phone or without Pepper. She never leaves her dog.
This is her missing poster that has been circulating on social media and in surrounding communities. She is described as 29 years old, long dark hair, brown eyes, 5'10", and is 128 pounds. She was last known to be wearing a purplish blue winter jacket and skinny blue jeans.
It's hard. Seeing my sister so broken is hard. No, we're a strong family and we'll stick together until we bring her home.
If you have any information on the whereabouts of Chelsea Heron, please contact the RCMP. Search and rescue have deployed a helicopter, and additional RCMP resources will be added in the search for Chelsea. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Survivors in the Northwest Territories are calling for intergenerational healing from the trauma of residential schools. And in one small South Slave community, that reconciliation may come in the form of a demolition. Here's Charlotte Moore Jacobs with that story.
Connie Benwell has never met her Uncle Marvin. That's because he never returned home from residential school. She keeps him and other family members in her heart, though, helping organize local walks for survivors and their families.
With all the graves being found, the unmarked graves being found, it just makes it more prevalent and just plays on your mind.
Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, population 1,600, mostly Dene, Cree, and Métis. But this quaint community has a dark past. Joseph Burr Tyrell Elementary School, Paul William Kaiser High School, and Brennett Hall all served as buildings for residential schools from the 1950s to the mid-1970s. As residential schools closed, the government sold the buildings or gave them back to the communities to be used as band offices and administrative facilities. Or they simply left them as is. Here at Fort Smith, 3 of those buildings remain and are actively being used as educational facilities. But many survivors here say they want to see those buildings demolished.
Fort Smith is still grieving from it, and I think once those buildings are torn down and we can see new buildings, then maybe new life will come into Fort Smith. But right now it almost seems like there's this big old black cloud just hanging over it.
It's not right. It's not okay to have those residential schools still standing and still being used.
This past National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Benwell stood with other residential school survivors and wellness workers like Brenda Shalafu.
Until we understand and comprehend the truth and take ownership, then it's harder to start reconciling.
Shalafu says when Indigenous people experience trauma, part of their spirit leaves their body.
I have 3 granddaughters who are in the elementary school. My children went through the school system, and I have had family members who stayed at Brainerd Hall. And so I know it's in the works, and it's been mentioned in the Legislative Assembly already, but we need to have ceremony as Indigenous people to call our spirits back, and to have family members who have passed on, to have the younger generation call their spirits back so that we can finally rest.
The South Slave School Division, based in town, says they are engaging with community members on options. Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Fort Smith. And
the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors. and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. Now to Ottawa, where a ruling handed down on Friday by the Supreme Court of Canada says a federal law to assess major infrastructure projects like pipelines is unconstitutional. Here's Annette Francis with more.
In a 5-2 decision, it found the federal government overstepped constitutional authority and should be more cooperative with provinces in the future. Something the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change says the government is committed to.
We will return to our homework and commit today to address this quickly and continue to make Canada an attractive and predictable place to invest in good, sustainable projects as we create and protect middle-class jobs and advance on a path of reconciliation.
The Impact Assessment Act received royal assent in 2019. It was meant to allow federal regulators to assess potential environmental and social impacts of resource projects. But it received a lot of opposition. In fact, the province of Alberta took the case to court, calling it the No Pipelines Act. It ended up in the Supreme Court last spring. The environmental advocacy group Eco Justice is one of a long list of interveners. Lawyer Josh Ginsberg says it's a disappointment. There's a great need for environmental assessments.
Some projects don't have their major greenhouse gas emissions assessed. That's a systematic problem. The decision refers to a certain Suncor project, which, and I have it here, is estimated to produce 3 million tons of CO2 annually. And the provincial process didn't assess it. The federal law was our only stopgap, the only thing standing between Canada and these harms.
According to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, the ruling doesn't mean the law is now off the books.
The federal government has responsibility in a number of these areas to ensure that our laws are protected. Like the Fisheries Act is a law. You can't just violate it because you don't like it. And so is the Species at Risk Act. And so the federal government continues to have a role, a legitimate role, with respect to whether projects move ahead.
Minister Guilbeault said the government would follow the court's guidance and work to improve the legislation through Parliament. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Still to come, a new land-based program in Saskatchewan aims to bring back traditions taken away by colonization. Stick around. Welcome back. A school at the Sturgeon Lake First Nation near Prince Albert, Saskatchewan has a land-based education program for its kindergarten to grade 12 students. The program is aimed at getting back the old Nehiyaw traditions that were taken from the community by colonization and residential schools. Brent McGilvery has this story.
Our young people being taken away from their homes to these residential schools as children. They lost their identity. They lost their culture. We didn't have this.
Tanya McCollum takes this man's words to heart. She is a K-12 teacher at the Sturgeon Lake First Nation Central School, a school with more than 400 students. She started with the land-based curriculum 6 years ago, bringing with her extensive knowledge in academics and her lifelong experience on the land.
I was raised by my grandparents right from an infant, so the first few years of my life was out on the land, so it was informal education. So a lot of things that that I know how to do was observing my grandmother or my grandfather. You know, my grandmother was the product of the Indian residential school system. So she was very quiet. She didn't like to talk because that's trauma from the residential schools.
Tanya's teaching combines Nieho and Western knowledge and a healthy helping of food sovereignty.
My education is based on the Western ways of doing things and the Indigenous ways of doing things. So weaving those two together makes it even stronger. And that's what we try and do at our school is we try and not one worldview is the way.
Introducing the students to food that comes from the land, the education is taught inside and outside the classroom.
When we first started cutting meat or pulling out fish from the lake, they were all grossed out, and that's changed.
The students are taught how to identify plants and animals and how local hunters bring meat to the school.
They're starting to realize that land and the food are the core of what we are as Indigenous people. And they've had great respect for the animals and the plants. When we talk about working from a land-based paradigm, and when we start talking about food sovereignty, that certain plants and animals, they have to have that spiritual connection.
Not only is Tanya busy teaching inside and out of the classroom, she does the same on Facebook for everyone to access and learn from.
Many non-Indigenous people are my followers. You know, they ask me questions, and it's good in a way because they know about our way of life and they want to know more. And then when they learn about our culture, there's it mitigates racism. So I think with reconciliation, I think land-based is the way to go when we want to indigenize our curriculums. Land-based is one of the ways.
Leonard Ermine and other local elders visit the school once a week. They share their knowledge with the students of the ways that were taken away from them when they were forced into residential schools. Leonard says the elders feel very fortunate to have Tanya and traditional knowledge being brought back.
With the truth and reconciliation, we're beginning going back. We say, "Askit Matsun," like what this woman is doing. We're going back to Mother Earth, going back to the old ways that our people and that lived, the way our people took care of us, the way our people fed us. These are things in that.
Brent McGillivray, APTN National News, Sturgeon Lake First Nation, Saskatchewan.
Looks like a great program there. The University of Winnipeg is equipping the next generation of Indigenous language teachers with the new virtual program. The program is called Teaching Indigenous Languages for Vitality Certificate. It gives speakers of Indigenous languages the requirements to teach their own language and create future programs. Their certificate's 10 courses are taught in English and applicable to any Indigenous language. Heather Suter is an assistant professor and Michif speaker. She co-developed the program.
Our language is critically endangered, as many, I should say, many Indigenous languages across Canada, North America, and around the world. We have very few speakers left, and so teaching Michif, even though I'm a second language learner myself, is part of what one has to do in language revitalization.
Indigenous entrepreneurs lined up for their chance to be on APTN's Bears Lair. We'll introduce you to some of them after the break. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. To follow along with our apparent sunset theme of the week, Or Noble sent in this amazing shot of a sunset from South Bank, British Columbia. Thanks for sharing. You can share your photos with us by sending them to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at Saturday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 12 for Charlottetown, 14 with rain in Halifax. Cloudy but 5 in Kuujjuaq, showers and 5 in Nain. 16 in Montreal, rain and 10 for Chibougamau. 11 with rain in Sault Ste. Marie and in North Bay. Mid-Northern Ontario, 11 for Thunder Bay with rain, 13 in Sioux Lookout. 16 in God's Lake, 17 in Norway House. 12 in Winnipeg, showers and 11 for Dauphin. 12 in Regina, 13 in Saskatoon. 13 for Meadow Lake, 11 and sunny in La Ronge. Sunny across parts of northern Alberta, 12 in High Level, 14 for Fort McMurray. 13 in Edmonton and Calgary, 17 in Lethbridge. Showers and 16 for Vancouver, partly cloudy and 15 in Victoria. Partly cloudy and 14 for Prince George, 13 in Smithers. plus 1 in Old Crow, 12 for Whitehorse. 10 in Yellowknife, 7 for Norman Wells. 2 above in Saxe Harbor, 1 in Inuvik. 6 for Chesterfield and Whale Cove, 9 in Arviette. Minus 11 in Resolute, 9 below in Arctic Bay. Bears Lair Season 2 just wrapped up shooting in Vancouver. And as APTN's Tina House tells us, this year there are more entrepreneurs than last year vying for the grand prize.
Okay, here we go. Ready, Anthony, and action.
Here at the North Shore Studios, Season 2 of Bears Lair is currently in production. Thousands of entrepreneurs applied to be in the show, but only a small few were chosen. They have traveled from across Canada to come to Vancouver and pitch their ideas to a panel of judges. The winner will receive $100,000.
Director is sitting.
Executive producer Gina Jackson is excited for the caliber of Indigenous businesses on this year's show.
We wanted to have entrepreneurs that provide our good or service that are making a difference in community. So all the contestants flew in last week and they got to experience Vancouver at its best.
And just like last year, the show features 4 core judges with a guest judge on each episode. Entrepreneur Dave Tuckerow is one of the core judges.
We haven't been a part of Canadian mainstream business community for a long time. And, you know, I've been involved in business myself for quite a while. And you can see the younger generation now coming in and starting to take their place, starting to earn money, making profits, hiring their own people from their communities.
New to the team of core judges is Clint Davis. He says he's also excited to see so many Indigenous entrepreneurs taking charge of their futures.
This is a remarkable program, really showcasing, I think, some of the best that we see with Indigenous business. I'm always surprised, Tina, with just the diversity of Indigenous businesses, the various industries that they're involved in. And what really is coming out now is just the passion, the commitment to community, a commitment to family, and all of that was a driver for them to start their business and to operate.
Tabitha Bull is the president and CEO of the Canadian Council of Aboriginal Business. She's also on the core judge team.
So we are seeing incredible growth of Indigenous entrepreneurs, even, despite COVID and all of the struggles that have continued to happen. We know Indigenous people are very resilient, so we've seen those businesses continue to push through and sustain.
Action carried.
Indigenous director Barbara Hager is directing the show this year, and Indigenous director of photography Cliff Hokinson is once again at the helm for Season 2. Although we didn't get to show any of the contestants in this story, they will be revealed at the premiere of the show in late spring on APTN. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Can't wait. It's a great show. Too bad we're going to be waiting, though, until next spring to see Season 2. Well, that is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. Of course, you can find much more over on our website, aptnnews.ca, and by visiting our YouTube page. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy, thanks for being with us. Stick around now for APTN Investigates and Part 2 of Secrets of the Bay. Have a great day.